Hi, I'm Tom, and in this video I will show you how to set up and use dimensions in FreeCAD Draft Workbench. I'm using FreeCAD 0.21.2, so things might change in the future. So let's get to it. So I've got my simple drafted shape here, and just to give you the idea how large it is, it's 20 by 20 millimeters if I use the measure tool. And now you use the dimension tool. You started by clicking the dimension button or the DI shortcut, and it's located on the draft annotation tools toolbar. So I start my dimension, and you draft the dimension by clicking first the first point that you want to dimension, then the second point, and the third click tells FreeCAD where to position the dimension lines. So I click here, and you can see that the dimension is created. Now I'm using the default FreeCAD dimension setup, so you can see that my dimension is really small, the text is small, the dots are small, etc. So I could either select this dimension line and change in the view. I could change the font size to, let's say, 2 and do other changes. But if I draw a new dimension, then it will be again too small. So what I want to do is change the overall style. There are two ways how to work with dimension styles. First one is using the annotation styles. And the second one, which I will start, is if I go to Preferences on the draft setup, I've got Text and Dimensions tab, and here I can set up dimension settings. So let me start with the most basic changes, which is the font size. This will affect text settings, but also dimension settings. So I will choose 2.5 millimeters, and also arrow size. I will change it to, this is a bit of a hit and miss with the arrow size, but let's try with 2 millimeters, and you can choose the arrow style. I will leave the dot. Now if I hit OK and I create a new dimension, you can see that out of the box the text size is much larger than previously. It's set to 2 millimeters. You can also see that dots are too large, etc. So what I like to do is set up first one dimension here in the viewport, so I've got direct response, and then change the default settings. So the text size is okay. The arrow type I will want to change to arrow, and these are really large. So I will change the arrow size to, let's say, 0.5. Let's say that's okay. Now the dimension overshoot is if this line is overshooting over the extension line. So if I set 2 millimeters, it will overshoot 2 millimeters over the extension line. And with these dimensions, I want to have it 0. Extension line overshoot is again this extension line overshoot. So if I set it to 2, it will go 2 millimeters on the other side of the dimension geometry. So again, I can leave this to, let's say, again 0.5. Let's say 1. And extension lines is the length of the extension line. It could be 0. So if I set 0, the extension line goes up to the dimensioned geometry. But if I set a distance like 5 millimeters, it will, it will go let's say if I set 1 millimeter, it will have 1 millimeter length. If I set 2 millimeters, it will have 2 millimeters length. So another thing that's important in my opinion is the offset of the text from the dimension line. So it's here the text spacing. So if I set it to 1 millimeter, you can see that's quite a lot. So I will set it to 0.3. Yeah, let's say that fits me. So now that I've got my basics set up, I repeat, if I create a new dimension, it will again be the original one, not this one that I set. But I wanted to know the basic sizes that I will want to use globally. So then I go to Edit, Preferences, Text and Dimensions. And extension line size, I set it up to, I'm not sure, it was 2 millimeters. Extension line overshoot was 1 millimeter. Dimension line overshoot I left at 0. Arrow style I will change. There's not too much options here, but yeah, for manufacturing, the arrow is usually used all around the world. Arrow size, I think, did I set it to 1? Text orientation I will go back to, and text spacing, it's I set it, now what did I set it to? Text spacing 0.3. Okay, let's go to 0.3 millimeters. So now if I let's say delete this dimension and create a new one, click once, click second time, click third time, you can see that I set the wrong arrow size. It should be 0.5 millimeter. So I will go to settings and arrow size 0.5 millimeter. Okay, so now if I create the dimension, it should be the same settings that I wanted to. So these settings that I set in preferences are now saved as part of your FreeCAD installation. So if you open a new file, and let me go to the top, and I start the dimension tool, it will use the same settings that I have in my preferences. So let's take a look at some other settings. First, I don't want to have the millimeter number after each dimension, and also I want to have just 0 decimals. So I go to preferences and I untick show the unit suffix in dimensions, and I also set the number of decimals to 0. Okay, now if I delete this dimension and I create a new one, you can see that it's without the millimeters and 0 decimals. Now you can see that the number is on the wrong side of the dimension line. It should be, according to ISO norms, on the left side, and you have this settings in the preferences which says the text orientation will be on the left. So why is it on the, you could also change it to the right, but I will leave it to the left. So why is it on the right now? It's because if I click the first point here and the second point here, it creates the dimension in a different way than if I click the first point here and second point here. So the order in which you click on these 2 points is important. So now it's taking so I have to click first on the bottom one and then on the top one. The alternative way of creating the dimension is instead of clicking one point and second point, which is good option for sometimes, you can start the dimension, and here you've got the option of hitting the E key or selecting the edge, or if you hold the Alt key, it will go automatically into the select edge option. And if I select this edge, then I only click here and it's dimensioning the edge automatically. So this is quite handy. The Alt option also enables me to dimension the radiuses of circles or diameters of circles. So if I hold Alt key and click on the circle, it will dimension the diameter. And also, if I hold Alt key and click one edge and then second edge immediately and then release the Alt key, it will dimension the angle between the two selected edges. So holding the Alt key is extending the functionality of the basic dimension. Let's also take a look at how to edit existing geometry of the dimensions. So if I select my dimensions and I see it here in my model tree and I double click it here in the model tree, I'm in the edit mode and you can see these 4 edit points. So each one does something different. This one changes the position of the dimension line. So if I click the point, move it here and click here, it changed the dimension line together with the text. This one moves just the text independent of the dimension line. So if I click it and move the text here, it's outside of, it's where I placed it. Now if I move the text, it starts to be independent of the dimension line. So now if I move the dimension line, it's not moving with the text. And okay, let's close editing of this one and let's select this one, go to the edit mode. These 2 points, they basically are what the dimension is measuring. So if I click this point and click here, I'm measuring this distance. Okay, so I could easily click here and let's say click here, and now I'm measuring this distance. I would now, let's say, move the dimension up here. Now I can close. So this is basically how you can edit the geometry of existing dimensions. Now let's change the font. So if I click this dimension, you can see that down here in the text part, I've got font name, and I can change the font to Arial or Deja Vu Sans. Okay, the font changes. But here in the global settings, I don't have the drop down menu for the font family. So I have to remember the name. So if I want to use Arial, I have to write Arial here with the keyboard, and now it will be using the Arial text. Now let's take a look at sizes or scale of the dimensions. You can see that the dimensions that I created, if I zoom out or zoom in, the sizes change or remain the same. There's an option in the preferences of the display mode to choose not the world but the screen, where the newly created dimensions will be screen dependent or the zoom dependent. So if I create a new dimension now up here, it has a really small, and it it only works with the text, nothing else. The dimension lines, extension, and the arrow stays the same, but the text changes size according to my zoom level. So if I by hand change my text size to 20, let's say 30, 40, okay, and now if I zoom out, the 12 number changes the size according to my zoom level. I don't think this is useful, but just to show you that there's the option. It's up here on the display option, display mode. I go to world, and yeah, now it stays the same all the time. So this is this option. I will switch it back to the world, and you can see that here in these preferences there's no overall scale of the dimension option. But if I go to my individual instance of the dimension, you can see I've got the scale multiplier here, and if I change it to 2, all of those sizes are twice as big. The arrow size is twice as big, the text is twice as big, the extension lines are twice as big, the overshoots are twice as big. So I can change the sizes here individually. So for these, if I change them to 0.5, the sizes change like this. But how do I achieve if I want to create a new set of dimensions which is only half as big as my original settings? I don't want to change the font size to half of this, the extension lines to half of this, etc. So how do I achieve that? I can achieve that through this scale widget. Now it might be possible that you don't have your annotation scale widget visible or turned on, and to turn it on you have to go to Preferences, go to the Draft workbench, User Interface Settings tab, and check Annotation Scale Widget, and this should turn the widget on. So now with my annotation scale widget, if I want all my new annotations to be 2 times as big, I will change the scale to 1 to 2. And now if I create a new dimension, you can see that it's twice as big. It has already automatically applied scale multiplier of 2. If I wanted to have the dimensions 10 times as big, I will change the scale to 1 to 10. And if I create a new dimension, this will be really, really large. You can see that it's 10 times as big. So this is how you can easily change the size of the dimensions without fiddling with all of the font size, extension line size, etc. So with this knowledge, I can easily use my dimensions that I set up for my manufacturing part to use it at my architectural drawing, because if I click here, the scale is really small. You can see that the dimension is really, really small. But if I change the scale widget to, let's say, 1 to 100, and I create the dimension, so from here to here, you can see that the size of the text is and the arrows is appropriate. Let's change the scale to 1 to 50. Now in this example, I will show you how to do continuous dimensions, because if let's say I create dimension up here and then I want to continue with the window, I have to click again, click this point, and try to match the exact line here. This is quite tedious. So instead of doing this, I can start the dimension and choose the continue, hit the T key or click the continue. And if I hit this point, select where the dimension line will be located. And now I continue from the first one. So now I select only this point, this point, this point, and this point. And if I hit close, then you can see that all of the dimensions are created as continuous. One confusing thing that I would like to mention is if I'm using the standard or meter kilograms seconds degrees, when I'm using the dimensions, and I will change the preferences to show suffix, and I will select all of these, and I will text show unit. I will change it to true. Now I've got these millimeters. I created these dimensions, but now if I create this dimension, I got continue turned on. So if I close that, you can see that it switched automatically to meters, which is not what I really want. And if I measure something larger, it will switch automatically to meters. And if I measure something below 10 meters, it will measure in millimeters. So this is not what I want. And it basically works as the default FreeCAD units. Here you can see that they are in millimeters, but if I create something large, they switch to meters. You can see it on the combo box on the left side. So how do I avoid this automatic switching, which I don't want to have? I will delete this dimension, and in the preferences, I can choose to override unit. And if I select millimeters here, all of my dimensions will be measured in millimeters, whether they are large, small, etc. So now if I create the dimension over the long edge of the house, you can see that it's 10,000 millimeters. So it's the correct measurement. Now, if you've got all these preferences set and you want to, let's say, use two different styles of dimensions on two different types of drawings, you can save these styles by going to the change default style for new objects widget. And if you click it here in the combo box, you will have the style settings that you have set in the preferences. And you can save this style. I will name it as style Radial millimeters. And you can do your changes. This works the same as in the preferences window. So let's say I want to change the text to Ubuntu, and then again I can save this style as Ubuntu style. Okay. And now I can easily switch between those styles. So it's up here in the default style for new objects, and you can also change lines and faces of objects here. So it's saved together with annotation and dimension styles. Let me change to my original Radial style. And again, these presets are available in all your drawings, in all your FreeCAD installations. So if I go to this original drawing, I can choose between the Ubuntu style and the Radial style that I created in the architecture drawing. Okay, so now let's take a look at the second major way you can set up dimension styles. The first one is saved in your FreeCAD installation, and it's part of the preferences. But if you send this this file to a colleague with a different FreeCAD installation, he will not have the dimensions will stay the same, of course, but he or she will not have access to these style settings because it's part of the FreeCAD installation. There's another set of annotation styles which is available through the on the draft annotation tools, this annotation styles button. And these styles basically behave independently of the ones that I described and are saved as part of the file. So let's see how these styles work. First, let's create a new one and let's name it architectural tick 1 to 50. Okay, so again, I've got my text settings and all of the other settings that we saw previously. Here you can also set the text color different than the line and the arrow color. So let me change the font size to 3 millimeters. Line spacing is only with the multi-line text, so it doesn't show in dimensions. Lines and arrows, I can show a line. I can change the width. So I've got some more options than with the default settings. And the arrow size I will set to again 0.5 millimeters. And with the units here, I can set my scale multiplier directly into the style. So I will set 50. I will set units override. I don't want to show units. Decimal 0. And again, these dimension line overshoot, I will set to 0. Extension lines, I will set to 6. Extension line overshoot, I will set to 2. And text spacing is the distance from the dimension line. I will set to 0.5 millimeters. Okay, so now I've got my style saved, and I will hit OK. Now nothing changes. The problem that I see with these annotation styles is that when I'm creating new dimensions, I've got no way to set the style to the new dimensions. So by default, I will do it this way. I will do it this way. By default, I click here. Oops, I created the one. So let's delete the one. And if I click here, I click here, and the default style is taken from my preferences. So I'm not sure about the way if there's a way to override this. So if you know about a way how to override it, how to set the certain annotation style as a default for the new dimensions, let me please know in comments below. But to change the style to the one that I created of this annotation, I go to the properties of the annotation and I select this one, and you can see that it changed the style accordingly. So I can basically select these dimensions and change the style to this one that I created at once, like this. So this is how annotation styles work, and as I said, they are part of the saved file. So if you send this file to a colleague, he or she could change the styles according to what's saved in the file. So this is an overview of FreeCAD Draft Workbench dimensions and how to work with dimension styles. I hope this is helpful, and I will see you in the next one.